Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Lewis and a couple others sent me a note. So Steve, check out this story. It's an update on what's happening in California. They refer to this as Leno's Law, although it's not like Jay Leno went to Sacramento and said, hey guys, I need you to pass me a law. But they were passing a law, people were discussing a law, and somewhere along the line somebody goes, hey, this would really affect Jay Leno because of the size of his car collection. And so it got nicknamed Leno's Law, but the headline from AutoWire, written by Stephen Symes, is California legislature pumps the brakes on Jay Leno's classic cars bill. Now, some people in some states, like Michigan, don't know about this firsthand, but many states have smog requirements, tailpipe emission standards, where you've got to bring your car in periodically to have the tailpipe checked to make sure that your car is not over-polluting. Michigan used to have such a law in some counties, but they did away with it when the air quality got better. At least that's what they told us. So I remember having to go for some time to get the tailpipe checked on my car at a local gas station. You flip them a couple bucks, they stick a thing in the tailpipe, they take a reading, and they give that to you and they say, there you go. And you have to use that to get the registration renewed on your car. So the California legislature is tweaking Jay Leno's classic cars bill, which would help them be exempt from smog checks. Now, it's actually Bill SB 712. Some people have dubbed it Leno's Law. And the law says that cars 35 years and older wouldn't be subjected to smog tests every 2 years to maintain their registration. Jay's got cars that are a lot older than that. So raining on the parade are health groups who genuinely think there are mass amounts of Californians who'd be driving around in old junkers to the extent it would result in far worse pollution. These are the same people with a ruler measuring the height of your front lawn. Because those groups have powerful lobbyists in Sacramento, state lawmakers have bowed to their wishes, trimming back the law. Now, it's gotten out of the committee on the Senate floor, and 2 amendments were added to it. And the 2 amendments, what we're talking about right now. A assembly person from Fremont who voted no on the bill in committee was highly critical of the exemptions, even with the amendments, saying clean air is a necessity, collecting cars is a hobby. I do not support rolling back progress on a public health issue we have spent decades trying to improve. The First Amendment says a vehicle would have to be 35 years or older and have a historical plate. So right there, making the person get a different license plate for the car would be an interesting thing, because a police officer, for instance, who saw a car going on the road that was just billowing smoke, if it didn't have a historical plate on, would know, that car can't be exempt under that law. That's one thing. But also, historical license plates in most places limit how far you can drive in a year and where you can drive the car. Now, some people abuse that, but that's another story. So that means that owners must shell out an additional $25 beyond the regular state registration fees. It also means that under state law, the car can only be driven in historical exhibitions, parades, or historic vehicle club activities. On top of that, the Second Amendment says owners must carry collector car insurance for the vehicle. And that likewise usually sets restrictions on how many miles the vehicle can be driven in a year. The whole point is there's paranoia the law could see old clunkers being daily driven, filling California cities with more smog. Now, here's the thing. I've actually got 2 cars that are kind of cool, I think. And I have them both insured separately, not on the same policy as my more mundane pedestrian cars. And I realize pedestrian cars in some ways is an oxymoron. But interestingly, the oldest car I own still isn't 35 years old. And so I think people are underestimating how old a 35-year-old car really is and how many of them are still out there. But again, to drive it under the law as it's written now would require you to have the different insurance on it and the historical plate on it. So Stephen Symes writes that we're not surprised by the development. After all, whenever us gearheads try to have fun, some health or environmental Karens inevitably come along and try ruining it. They get our tracks closed, complain of exhausts aren't whisper quiet, and try to portray every car enthusiast as a criminal who doesn't contribute to society. Okay. That might be a little bit much, but sometimes Sometimes it feels that way. Sadly, California used to be one of the best places for the car hobby, but as the state government has exerted increasing control over all aspects of life there, many enthusiasts have fled the state for greener pastures. We wonder if Lehto's bill will be changed further, and if it's changed further, what it'll read like, and also if it will even pass. So I've always seen it called Lehto's law, but Lehto's bill, whatever you want to call it. Again, like I said, I'm pretty sure that they started activity on the bill, and then somewhere along the line, somebody said, "Hey, Jay, what do you think of this?" And he said, "Oh, I think it's a great idea. Got a lot of cars that are over 35 years old." And now, just to do a counterpoint from the assembly person who said, cars are hobbies and people, driving cars billowing smoke, Jay's got a Duesenberg. He's got a couple Duesenbergs. But he's got a Duesenberg, and I've had a ride in Jay's Duesenberg. And the Duesenberg doesn't billow smoke. He doesn't drive it that often. I don't know how many miles he puts on it in a year. But the Duesenberg, really? Do you really need to bring that thing into a gas station or a service station and have them check the tailpipe for emissions? Does it really on that car? I got a better one for you. Jay owns a Chrysler Turbine car. Oh, I turned the right way for once. Jay's got one of these cars, or one of those cars, but in the real life-size one that actually, runs. I believe he runs it on jet fuel because the thing runs on virtually anything that burns, but you could run it on, things like, unleaded gas or home heating oil or tequila or Chanel No. 5 or peanut oil, variety of things. And so presumably, if that thing is subject to tailpipe emissions, he'd have to bring it in and have them check the tailpipe on it to see what it's putting out. Now, I can tell you that back in the 60s, when they put those things on the road, one of the things they were working on was tailpipe emissions, because back then the federal government was cracking down on certain kinds of tailpipe emissions. But I have no idea what would come out of the tailpipe of that car if you were to put, say, Chanel No. 5 in it. It might smell nice, I don't know, but would it pass a tailpipe emissions test in California? Presumably it did, because his are plated and insured, his cars are, but I suspect he's got more 35-year-old or older cars than the average person in California, so it does make sense to name the law after him. However, this is the thing that's been missing from every single story I've seen on this. And I don't know the answer to this, but someone does. Someone in Sacramento could go to the DMV and say, we're curious about something. We need some research from you, and we think you've got the answer. Can you tell us how many cars are currently plated in California that are 35 years old or older? And that would be an interesting number to know. Now, you might say, but Steve, if they make it legal to drive the cars that are 35 years old or older, some of them have probably been parked because they can't pass the emissions test. I suspect somebody else could go, yeah, but then let's get a second number from the DMV. How many vehicles are titled that are 35 years old or older in California? And how many of them are titled? And, it might be that there's a ton of vehicles that are titled that would never get back on the road again, but it would be an interesting thing to know, because who knows? But I can tell you, I went to law school in California, and I went out there in 89, and I came back in 91, so it was basically a 2-year period of time. And when I was out there were days where the smog was still very, very bad. Now, I've been back to California since then, and the air seems a lot cleaner to me, like it's gotten a lot cleaner. And when I was out there, they had just started putting in things like the gas stations routinely carried gasoline that you could choose to buy that they said burned cleaner, that kind of thing. And so I think their efforts have been working, and so I applaud them for that. But I personally think that to say, if your car is 35 years old or older, it's got an antique plate on it, and it's insured as an antique or classic car, that will exempt you from the smog checks. I can't imagine that would be, catastrophic to the atmosphere out there. But then again, I don't live there either, so it's not my problem. I'll let you guys fight about it. But yeah, I'm sure it helped Jay out a lot if he was having to take his cars, including things like his turbine car and his Duesenberg, in for the tailpipe emissions. So California legislature pumps the brakes on Jay Leno's classic cars bill. Stephen Symes wrote that for the Autowire.com. Lewis sent it. Thanks a lot. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Life has no limitations except the ones you make.